Hey guys, Dr. Juicy here, mtfucoach.com. How are you tonight on this weekend, on this lovely Sunday? I want to talk about three things I learned from three-time Mr. Olympia, Frank Zane, who I've had the pleasure and honor of working with over the years. I've written a couple of times for his quarterly publication. I've covered a contest for him, and I've trained with him too, so learned a lot from him. I want to say beginning, the number one thing I probably learned was to pay strict attention to detail. Frank has always said in bodybuilding anyhow, it's not the biggest who wins, not necessarily just the biggest, but who's the most complete. And this was really marked as a truth early when I started training. I started training when I was 12 years old in 1975. I had the vinyl set at home. By the time I hit junior high, I was using the Universal, and then I finally joined my first gym when I was 15. What was the first exercise I did? It wasn't a bench press, it wasn't a curl, it was seated calf raises. Even though my calves are rather poorly developed, it's a different issue at this point right now. But it's the first exercise I ever did in the gym. Why? When my father brought me home some magazines when I was just a little kid, the first bodybuilder I saw was Frank Zane. He happened to be Mr. Olympia at the time. He was the best, and the first picture I looked at was him sitting there doing seated calf raises, and calves were like popping out. I'm like, wow, I want to get like that. And in fact, my mother, father both knew who he was, and my mother liked him. She said, you know, Michael, Frank Zane, he's got all these degrees, he's very smart, and he's a good-looking guy, and he's articulate, and he looks good in a suit. You should kind of be like him. I don't want you to get as big as the Hulk. Of course, there was never any danger of me getting too big, because I couldn't, so I went the direction of Zane. So I've always been a student of Zane, and I've learned from a lot of the other bodybuilders too, but it always kind of comes back to Zane for me. I've never really been a big guy. The three things that I look at, I mean, he's always talked about complete development, as I said earlier, working all the detail muscles. He would always say, listen, if you're in a bodybuilding contest or judging one, which I've done many, many times, you don't want anything to stand out overly so. Oh, he's got a tremendous chest, or he's got great thighs. Well, what does that say about the other body parts? It says that some things are underdeveloped. So he was all about parsimony and hitting everything equally, and really kind of that Zen yin and yang thing. He was very cerebral, and I learned a lot from that. In fact, training the way he trained and putting quality above heavy weights. Never been injured in the gym. I've been injured outside of the gym, and I probably lengthened my career because of that. And I've strengthened my longevity at 56. I think I could still get even better and better, and I plan to. So that's number one. Number two, he would talk about keeping the waist small. In fact, I have one of my diets that he gave me here back in 2003 when I was just turning 40. I was just coming off an injury. I didn't have the same physicality I have now. I was pretty overweight. I had a lot less lean mass. So what did he have me doing? He had me eating 1,500 calories a day and about 150 grams of protein. It wasn't a lot of food. Because my body didn't require a lot. Now Evan Centopani's got me on 1,000 more calories and 300 grams of protein a day. I'm a lot leaner, a lot more muscular. I could take a lot more. But that being said, even though I wasn't in great shape when I was working with Frank, I ended up getting in good shape. He still espouses the tenet of less is more. In other words, he would say, never feel hungry, never feel full. You should always be feeding your body, eating for fuel only, not eating for pleasure, not bulking up like we did in the 80s. You gain 30 or 50 pounds above your target weight. Listen, the metabolic cost and the damage you do to your physicality it adds up over time when you're ripping weight off and piling it on year after year. I mean, I've done that to the tune of 1,100 pounds in my lifetime. He and Arnold back in the day, they would lose weight after a contest and they'd build back up to it. So again, it was much more of a cerebral thinking man's game back then. It was probably more quality versus quantity, and there's different issues regarding that. Probably the best thing that I learned from Zane was that there is no real right or wrong way to stay away from dogma. I do a lot of videos and training, as you know, and I get attacked from some people who have credibility too, and they're good about it. Hey doc, you know, those hanging leg raises are really tough on the psoas muscle or whatever. And I'd say, well, you know, I got great abdominals, if I may say so myself, and I'll also tell you what I don't have, but from doing those, and it's never caused me any problems, so I'm going to keep doing it. And Zane would say this, he'd say, listen, if the scientists and the professors and the textbooks and the trainers and the BSers all say that something is wrong, and I do it and it doesn't cause me any damage and I'm getting results from it, I'm going to keep doing it. And that makes perfect sense because listen, if you get caught on the dogma and there's only one way to do things, you're never going to get any better because everybody's different on this planet. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different length to their femur, their humerus, pelvic disposition, their metabolism. So how can there be only one way? I mean, there's a guy somewhere in Missouri baling hay. That's all he does, and he's got a physique better than anybody's. He doesn't even know it, just from doing this weird motion, and who knows why. So look, science is important, but we know a lot about studies now. A lot of them are bullshit. So you've got to be your own lab, find out what works for you, don't do any damage to yourself, and listen, keep making progress. People are happy when they're making progress, even begrudging progress. One thing I didn't mention about Zane and keeping his waistline real small, something he did in the 70s, he would ingest up to 200 amino acid caplets a day. He would do that to get half of his protein, and the other half would come from whole foods. But what was he doing? He was eating a lot less food volume, so he's keeping his stomach small. It was always about keeping the stomach really small, making everything else look a lot bigger. So again, it wasn't any of this overeating, bloating your stomach, and you do that long enough, the stomach kind of stays that way. You stretch everything out. So that was interesting. I don't necessarily recommend doing that, but again, he was more about parsimony, looking at the chemistry behind things, getting the most out of less, and maybe it's something that you can consider too. I know I do, it works for me. Your thoughts, questions, considerations, statements put down below are appreciated. And let me know what you think, and I'll see you real soon. Thank you.